Dear students, this video is for MA 4 semester course for the paper British novels. In this video, I will take one of the important novels, that is A Portrait of Artist as a Young Man of James Joyce, and the focus will be on A Quest for Status, the aesthetic philosophy of Stephen Dedalus. Stephen Dedalus, who is the mouthpiece of James Joyce, and through this character, James Joyce expresses his aesthetic philosophy. He expresses his concept about art, his concept of beauty, his concept of pity and terror, as well as he divides art into three categories. These we will learn in this video. The crucial point that takes place in this novel is in chapter number 5. Where Stephen Dedalus rejects a very respectable job, a very respectable offer. The offer is to be a priesthood in Catholic Church. He rejects that offer and he wants to be an artist. An artist, according to him, is a priest of eternal imagination. He rejects the offer of priesthood in Catholic Church, whereas he wants to be a priest of eternal imagination. Why he wants to be a priest of eternal imagination? Why does he reject that offer? So the answer is he does not want to apply restrictions on him. He wants freedom. An artist is a free man. He is not bound to anything, and he accepts that he will not accept pressure, or he will not accept whatever he does not like, whether it is country, whether it is religion, or whether it is any job. So he rejects the idea of priesthood, to be a priest in Catholic Church, and wants to be an artist and become an artist. And who the artist is, he says to his friend, to quote, "A priest of eternal imagination, transmuting the daily bread of experience into the radiant body of ever-living life." An artist transmute the daily experiences into an ever-living life. Whenever we will read a work of art, we relive that work of art. All the characters start reliving their life. So the experiences transmuting into an ever-living life. His work of art having perennial beauty. In this connection, as Suzanne Weisskopf notes, to quote, "The creative act usurps the act of worship for Stephen, and his purpose in life becomes that of God, to make a sacred world in his work of art. Such an accomplishment would be his salvation." What he wants? He wants to create his own world in his work of art like God. His imagination, his world, his theory, his law, his rules and regulations. So he, like God, wants to create a world in his work of art. And further the critic says that such an accomplishment would be his salvation. If he achieves success, if he becomes a successful one in explicating or in creating his world, so this would be his salvation. This would be one of the means of salvation to him. So his creation, his world is a medium of his salvation. If he accomplishes in that means he achieved salvation. So it is quite imperative to know what his theory about aesthetic art is. Before this theory, one important point or one important image is also crucial what the image is. The image of a winged man soaring in the sky. He saw a man soaring in the sky. Stephen sees himself soaring on his wings of creative imagination. So Stephen sees himself. He feels that he himself is soaring in his sky on his wings of creative imagination. His wings is his creative imagination, and with the help of his imagination, he is soaring in his sky. And this imagination, this creative imagination, this soaring is like Stephen Dedalus, like the mythical artificer. Stephen therefore must test the intellectual as well as artistic potentiality of his creative imagination, or rather of his wings, that would make him fly successfully. His aesthetic theory is the result of that test. Stephen depends on Aristotle as well as Thomas Aquinas for the formulation of his aesthetic theory, but at times he deviates and he takes some liberty that suits his purpose. And the important deviation, or important rather modification, is that instead of taking Thomas Aquinas' theory that is having a supernatural implication, he goes for secular implication. Stephen argues that a thing can be considered art if it is able to bring about an aesthetic status by its formal rhythm of beauty. Talking about art, Stephen tells Lynch, his friend, what he tells, to quote, "It awakens or ought to awaken, or induces or ought to induce, an aesthetic status, an ideal pity, or an ideal terror, a status called forth, prolonged and at last dissolved by what I call the rhythm of beauty." He says that a thing of beauty definitely will arise an emotion, that aesthetic emotion, and that aesthetic emotion must be a status one, or must be a static one, not a kinetic one. If it is a kinetic one, then it is an improper art. What is aesthetic emotion and what is kinetic emotion? I will tell. So he says that art arouses aesthetic emotion in us, the true aesthetic emotion being static. It arrests the mind and raises it above desire and loathing. If a thing of beauty arrests our mind and it rises ourself above desire and loathing, then it is a good piece of work, then it is a good piece of art, then it has a beauty, it has a aesthetic status. If it does not arises our mind or ourself above desire and loathing, then it is having a kinetic aesthetic, and that is an improper art. Stephen holds that the dramatic emotion is static. According to Stephen, any art that arouses the kinetic emotions of desire and loathing instead of static emotion is an improper art, since the emotions of desire and loathing are unaesthetic, are kinetic in character, and are nothing more than physical. And he tells to his friend, he quotes that desire urges us to possess, to go to something. Loathing urges us to abandon, to go from something. These are kinetic emotions. The art which excite them, pornographical or didactic, are therefore improper art. Any art which produces kinesis instead of status is bad art. So he says that any art that arouses the kinetic aesthetic or kinesis emotion is a bad art, and he is not for didactic or pornographical excitement or approach. His approach to art is like art for art's sake, raising above the precinct of morality and didacticism. An artist should endeavor to create art that exists entirely for its own sake. Art has no purpose other than aesthetic purpose, and this aesthetic purpose can only be achieved if this art is a beautiful one. And to be a beautiful one, what are the requirements? There are three requirements, that are integritas, consonantia, and claritas. He says, Stephen defines art as, to quote, the human disposition of sensible or intelligible matter for an aesthetic end. And art is a human disposition, human imagination, human creation of sensible or intelligible matter for an aesthetic end. An aesthetic end is achieved only when a thing is apprehended as beautiful because of its formal qualities. As I told you that it must have three qualities: integritas, consonantia, and claritas, the constitutive aspect of beauty. Here we find that Stephen Dedalus modifies the meaning of Thomas Aquinas in his in the connection of three aspects of beauty, in the connection of three conditions of beauty. What is the difference? See, according to Thomas Aquinas, he says that for beauty includes three conditions, that is integritas, it means perfection; consonantia, which means harmony; and claritas, which means brightness or clarity. Whereas Stephen Dedalus translate these three terms into a different meaning. He takes the different meaning of the three terms. What is the different? However, Stephen Dedalus translate integritas as wholeness. Instead of perfection, instead of integrity, he takes the first term integritas as wholeness, consonantia as harmony, that is quite same, and claritas as radiance. Aquinas has taken claritas means clarity or brightness. Here Stephen has taken claritas as radiance. Incidentally, as a critic explained, integritas has also the meaning of wholeness or completeness, which better fits the diminutor. Stephen argues that if a thing can be apprehended as one whole, or if a thing has a quality to stand alone as one thing, it is said to have integritas. Wholeness could be understood as the ability to exist all by itself. If a thing has the potentiality to exist all by itself, if it is a total entity in itself, then it has a wholeness, independent of everything around it. If a thing is independent of everything around it and remains self-sufficient, then this quality is the wholeness. Such sufficient or independent existence is able for a thing only because of a complex dynamics between its part and its whole. So the next quality, that is the consonantia, that is the harmony. So this independence, this self-sufficiency is achieved only when the complex dynamics between its part and its whole, only when if it has a dynamics, if it has a harmony between the parts and its whole. If a thing can be apprehended as, to quote, complex, multiple, divisible, separable, made up of its part, the results of its part and their sum, it has consonantia, harmony. In other words, consonantia is the relation between the fragment and the whole. Stephen's translation of the term is akin to due proportion or harmony. This is the second quality of a thing to be called or to be considered as a beautiful. Third quality, he says that integritas and consonantia together make a thing an integrated whole, resulting in its claritas. According to Stephen, claritas is what is known as the quiditas, the whatness of a thing. So whatness is the true identity of a thing that becomes suddenly manifest when a proper analysis is made. So the third quality is the whatness of the thing. It is the thisness of the thing. What is the whatness of the thing is his quality. And this becomes suddenly manifest when a proper analysis is made. He argues that the supreme quality claritas is felt by the artist when the aesthetic image is first conceived in his imagination. Later on he says that the concept of whatness suggests understanding a thing as that thing which it is and no other. That means the understanding a thing as that thing is. It is and no other thing. The quiditas. With his use of the term quiditas for claritas, Stephen manages to avoid the spiritual connotation of the later term. In the process, he gains the endorsement of the Aquinas for his aesthetic theory without really adhering to the philosophy of Aquinas. For Aquinas, the claritas means some divinity or some, he used the term, some operative and essential presence of God. For Aquinas, the claritas, the term for Aquinas means it must have some operative or essential presence of God. That means it is having some operative and essential presence of God. Whereas for Stephen Dedalus, he rejects that idea. He says that the whatness of the thing, he does not go for the religious implication, but he goes for the secular implication. In the process, he gains the endowments of Aquinas for his aesthetic theory without really adhering to him. Stephen's notion of quiditas has a striking resemblance to Gerard Manley Hopkins' adaptation of Duane's Scottish theory of hectitas, meaning thingness. It has a resemblance with the Gerard Manley Hopkins' theory of Hagitas, that means the thingness, that means the thisness of the thing. His theory of quiditas owes more to Duane's Scottish than to Aquinas. So this is the three important qualities which are very much essential, for a particular thing to be considered or to be experienced as a beautiful thing. So he says that anything that has the quality of integritas, consonantia and claritas is a thing of beauty. And the experience of beauty arises a profound enchantment of the heart when a man experiences this beauty. The beauty that is having all the three qualities, so it gives one experiences an intense spiritual state, a profound enchantment of heart. When the human mind apprehends the supreme quality of beauty, the clear radiance of the aesthetic image, the mind is not only arrested by the wholeness of the object of beauty, but also fascinated by its inherent harmony. This spiritual state of mind is the luminous silence status of aesthetic pleasure. So he says that this state of mind, the luminous silent status of aesthetic pleasure, we experience after realizing or after seeing after seeing a beautiful object. If a particular object has these three qualities, then it arises aesthetic status, and this is a luminous silence, status of aesthetic pleasure. After that, he compares this beauty, the word beauty, with truth, as we find this concept also in John Cast, truth is beauty and beauty is truth, that is all to know on this earth, as well as a thing of beauty is a joy forever. So the same apprehension, same concept is also there in this particular novel. James Joyce also expresses the same idea. What he says that however, Aquinas and Aristotle are not the only source of Stephen. He indebted to Plato for the formulation of his philosophy. That is, Plato tells to Lynch, quoting Plato, he tells Lynch that the beauty is the splendor of truth. Beauty is the splendor of truth. That means whatever is truth is a beautiful, and beauty exposes the truth. Whatever the beauty is, it reveals the truth, it reveals the divinity. That is the relation between the beauty and truth. Both have an equal stance, both have an equal potentiality. Later on, Stephen divides his art into three forms: lyrical, epical, and dramatic. He says that lyrical form is quite personal one, and in that the artist presents his image in immediate relation to himself. Second is the epical form. To epical form, he says that the artist presents his image in immediate relation to himself and to other. So epical form, it is personal as well as impersonal, it is subjective as well as objective. His experience is there, but it is expressed through some characters. Lyrical form is totally personal, totally subjective. And the third form is the dramatic form. What he says that in this form the dramatist presents his image in immediate relation to others, and thereby achieving a pure impersonal quality for the narrative. So summing up his aesthetic theory, Stephen sees that in the dramatic form, to quote, the personality of the artist, at first a cry or a cadence or a mood, and then a fluid and lambent narrative, finally refines itself out of existence, impersonalizes itself, so to speak. So he gives a development of an artist, that the first form is the lyrical form, and it is a kind of cry, then it is a fluid, then it is totally a personal or impersonalizes itself, then it is itself out of existence, impersonalizes itself, so to speak. So here he touches upon one of the important theory of T.S. Eliot, that is the theory of impersonality, the objectivity or the impersonality of art. Stephen can compare the artist only to God of creation, who remains within, who remains beyond, who remains outside. God, he has created this world, God has created this world, God is in this world, God is beyond this world, God is behind this world. If an artist develops these qualities, an artist is like a god. If he is able to impersonalize his art, then he is like God. So he says that, to quote, the God of creation, the artist only to the God of creation who remains within or behind or beyond or above his handiwork, invisible, refined, out of existence, indifferent, paring his fingernails, unquote. It is when an artist creates a piece of art that has wholeness, harmony, and radiance, and when he transcends his work of art like the God of creation, that his work of art is able to produce the true aesthetic status in the beholder. This is his aesthetic theory. If we look in the connection of a portrait of artist as a young man, we find that the portrait of artist can be divided, the whole novel can be divided or can be judged on his three divisions. The first portion, the infant Stephen Dedalus, is the lyrical form. The novel begins with the lyrical form. When he goes to college, it turns into epic, and finally when he makes up his mind to leave home, it becomes dramatic. So his all the three his division is quite applicable in his novel as well. His aesthetic theory exposes his aesthetic theory through the Stephen Dedalus. He talks about beauty, he talks about an artist, and what are the essential qualities of a thing to be called as a beautiful thing. So he expresses these things in this particular novel. Thank you.